All right, here at Jamie McLennan and Craig Button, guys, the Olympics have finally arrived, and it's been 12 long years since we had best on best at the Olympics. So let's begin there. We know the team. The team is healthy. We know what's going on the ice for Canada. When this all shakes out, Craig, how good do you think this Canada team could be in the end compared to previous best on best clubs?
Yeah, well, when you look at it, every iteration is going to be a little bit different in some way, shape, or form. The 2014 team was unbeatable. To me, that has been the best entity that Canada has put on the ice during their participation with NHL players at the Olympics. But this team doesn't have an area where you would say there is considerable weakness. You can look pick at different areas. There's other countries that have a strength that might be greater than Canada's, but it's a really deep team. It's got great forwards, arguably the two best forwards in the NHL right now in McKinnon and McDavid, and arguably the best defenseman in the world in Cale Makar. So you start with with that trio, you're in pretty darn good shape.
Greg, I think you're right on a lot of different fronts, but my concern, obviously being the former goaltender, is yes, you're looking at the goaltending situation. Jordan Binnington will be handed the reins, and what he did at the Four Nations face-off was fantastic, and there's no reason to doubt him, but he hasn't had a great season, and to me the depth will be challenged. I look at that defensive core as well. Craig, I'll go a step further. I think they've got the three best players on the planet on their team, because I'll throw Cale Makar in there. But after that, on defense and in goaltending, I would argue other countries have more depth in that situation. So that's what concerns me a little bit. That you mentioned the 2014. When you look at other teams, I think it's been more balanced. Certainly Canada has a wealth of riches up front. On D, very stable, and goaltenders are very good individually. But I think that's where people are going to pick at it, is the depth of defensive core and the goaltending. Will it hold up against other countries?
Yeah, I think nostalgia is tough to beat when it comes to situations like this, guys. I mean, in goal particular, right, with the goaltenders, where there were times where it was just an embarrassment of riches. We're sitting here before the tournament starts uncertain of who's even going to play for Canada, not because we love all the options, because we're uncertain of the options, where in the past we would love the goaltenders. And I think on defense in particular too, obviously Cale Makar is an all-time great, but there have been past teams. You want to go back to 72 and obviously through the 80s and the 90s of the Canada Cups and 2010 and 2014, where there were like 3-4 lock Hall of Famers. I'm not sure we have that right now, at least playing at their height. But the beauty of a tournament like this is it may not be about who is the best. If you win it, you might be the most beloved team of all time, because we've waited so long to finally get back to best on best. All right, let's talk about who they're going to be competing against. And obviously there are some really good countries every time we get to the Olympic Games. But Noodles, we'll start with you. Is the U.S., are the Americans the biggest threat to take down Canada?
I think they are, and I just talked about it, because if there is any slight weakness that Team Canada might have, it starts on the back end and net, and then the defensive core, because you could arguably, when you start to do, I say this all the time, let's do the whiteboard. If you lay these teams on top of each other on the whiteboard in their respective positions, you could take the U.S. goaltending over Canada's goaltending, and outside of Cale Makar, I think there's 3 or 4 defensemen you'd take on the U.S. side ahead of the Canadians, and that's the biggest challenge. Up front, I have no doubt that Team Canada stacks up better than anybody as far as, we'll call it 1 to 14, how many ever forwards you want to ice. I know John Cooper's going to be able to potentially ice a couple extra forwards, but when you look at it, I think there's the forwards are outstanding, but the defense and the goaltending, I would match up against the U.S. I would give the advantage to the U.S. slightly.
Yeah, based on what happened at the Four Nations, we saw Canada and the U.S. really literally go head to head. It was great hockey. It was competitive hockey. It was fiery hockey. I think we'll see a lot of that same style of game if Canada and the U.S. get to the gold medal game, which I expect that to be the case. But to Jamie's point, clear check mark in net for the Americans, clear check mark on the blue line for the Americans. So now it becomes, okay, can the Canadian offense, led by their forward group, be able to put a dent into the defense and the goaltending of the U.S.? You look at the Swedes can never be underestimated. And when you consider that their goaltending is really strong, their blue line is really strong, they're not as strong up front, but I don't think you can underestimate the Swedes. So here's where I put the Swedes into a spot where you better be careful. You don't want to be playing them in a semifinal game because they could be the fly in the ointment and prevent Canada or the U.S. from getting to the gold medal match.
Yeah, I would agree with you guys. I think on paper, certainly the Americans, have the best chance at knocking off Canada. But history would suggest the U.S. outside of North American soil doesn't go so well, right? We're not in Salt Lake City here. We're not in Vancouver. We're in Europe. And I know what you guys would say, well, completely different roster, completely different people. Sure, but I'll believe it when I see it. I think if I were to be given the Americans versus the field, I might take the field here with Sweden, like you said. Finland is always pesky at this tournament. Other European teams are going to show up, and they're going to show up big, and they're going to get a ton of support once they get over there, too. So I do think on paper the Americans are clearly maybe the best team, period. Maybe better than Canada. And obviously, if they all show up the way they're capable of, I'd love to see Canada versus the U.S. in the gold medal match. But I'm not going against those European teams. And I do think the Americans have to prove on European soil they're going to show up here. You mentioned the Four Nations a few minutes ago there, Craig. And obviously that was a crown jewel. And it was not something I was expecting. Noodles, I know you were not expecting it. I'm not sure a lot of us were expecting how great that tournament turned out to be. And the excitement level was through the roof. So I'll pose this question to you guys, and starting with you, Craig. Do you think this Olympic Games will match or exceed the excitement level that we got from the Four Nations?
Once we get to the semifinal, that's when it'll start to really, raise and become really significant. I mean, we know what the stakes are. You get to the semifinal, and you got to win to get to the gold medal match, or you're playing for the bronze. I think it'll take that long for the crescendo to come to that level at the Olympics. It's because the competition outside of 5 countries just isn't that good, Brian. And we only saw 4 teams at the Four Nations, hence the name Four Nations. And that's why it was so good right from the get-go. We won't get that to the semifinal of the Olympics.
I agree, but I'm going to go a step further. It's because it's the Olympics and you're playing for a gold medal. What were you playing for the Four Nations face-off? A shoebox with something on top of it? Did these guys even have a Four Nations trophy sitting on their mantle? I doubt it. They were proud. And listen, as fans and media and people that watched it, we were excited because we hadn't seen, quote-unquote, best on best in a long time. So everyone was fired up. Now we're going to go another level into the Olympics where everything is on the line for a gold medal, a silver medal, a bronze medal. So to me, the excitement will be there once you get down to, in the semifinals and the finals. But with the Four Nations face-off, people were just starving for that type of content, starving for best on best. So they were so excited about it. But I think it's going to be another level for the Olympics.
Yeah, I think it will be for the players, right, in their shoeboxes back home. Obviously, they want gold medals. But as a fan, I don't think it will reach the same level of excitement. And I can't believe I'm saying this because this time last year, I was goofing on the Four Nations face-off. And I was saying, I'm not even sure I'm going to pay attention to the Four Nations face-off. But it caught my attention immediately, in large part because of the NHL rules, which allowed bigger hits, fights, which factored in the Bell Center, Mario Lemieux, Wayne Gretzky before the game. That just can't be replicated over there. And I get this is a bigger stage. I understand it means more historically, of course it will, for the players' resumes. But if you're asking me as a fan, 8 p.m. Eastern time puck drop with Mario Lemieux rolling out and fights right off the bat, I don't think you can top it. I really don't know if you can. So obviously we'll wait to see how this plays out. It's going to be a great tournament. If we get Canada, U.S. in the gold medal, I reserve the option to change my opinion, but the Four Nations, man, did it pop. Noodles, let's continue this chat in terms of positional players. We'll get to goaltending in just a moment, but positional players, which positional player for Canada do you think is the most important?
I mean, if you're looking at the third line, depending on how you shake it down, and I guess there's an argument there, whether that's, Marner, Stone and Crosby, if that's your third line. Like the positional, for me, the third line, I think, is going to be very important. And when you look at it, if it's best on best, top versus top, eventually teams are going to cancel each other off. So it'd be easy for me to say it's just the goaltender or it's your number one defenseman. But I think the third line for Team Canada especially is going to be a difference maker because they're going to have to score, but they're also going to probably match up against other teams' best. So if you're talking about positional players or players, I think it's the third line for Team Canada. That's my focus for them.
You go to the Olympics, it's about the best of the best. And you watch the NHL, nobody's been able to stop 97 or 22. That's McDavid and McKinnon. And there's no reason to believe that they can be stopped at the Olympics. Listen, it's their first time participating there. But to me, there will be no bigger spotlight, no brighter spotlight than the one that's going to be shone on Connor McDavid. And Connor McDavid is ready for this. He's primed for this. Beginning of the season, we saw him trying to find his way. He has more than found his way. And to me, you look at the passing of the torch. Crosby in 2010, 14 was a little bit different. This is McDavid's time. The Olympics are about who's the best and who can stand up to the challenges and to the bright lights. My focus is clearly on 97 Connor McDavid.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Craig. But I will take it a step in a different direction and say who is the absolute best defenseman on earth? It's Cale Makar. And I'm going to say it's Cale Makar for me in terms of the most important positional player because I think he's going to chew up the most ice time. I think there's a chance he plays more than anyone else in the tournament. And I think when you look at the defense, they're very good. They're very sound. But he is a step above anybody else that's on that team. You look at the Americans in particular. Quinn Hughes is a great player. He's playing with McAvoy, right? He's got Sanderson and Werenski coming out behind him. He's got Slavin and Faber coming out behind them. That doesn't happen with this Canadian team. I think there's a ton of emphasis on Cale Makar, where obviously McDavid's got to be great, and I expect that he will be. If, for whatever reason, he's not on, I trust McKinnon can pick up where he left off. There's no picking up where Cale Makar leaves off, right? If he doesn't have his A++ game, they don't have that replicate. So I'm going to look to Cale Makar here. Usually we're going back and forth here. I'm going to make an adjustment because we're about to talk goaltending. So I'll give you the chance to pop off at the end, Craig. But we'll go back to you, Noodles, to start the next chat here. Which goaltender, and we've talked about this ad nauseum for years now, which goaltender that's over there playing for Canada will be playing when it matters the most? Not necessarily game one, but who's going to be in net when they really, really need them by the end of the tournament?
I'm going with Jordan Binnington. And you know what? There were questions a year ago. We were having these conversations, and believe me, they were rightfully so. But Jordan Binnington, to me, silenced a lot of critics because of how well he played at the Four Nations face-off. So you look at his pedigree, you look at his resume. Won a Game 7 on the road in the Stanley Cup Final for the St. Louis Blues. Won an overtime game at the Four Nations face-off. Not just sitting in the net in a lawn chair, making several big saves to keep it tied until McDavid goes down and scores. So to me, it's going to be Jordan Binnington. Yes, I will agree that his leash will be shorter based on Logan Thompson, based on Darcy Kemper. There is some depth there in guys that have won or have played very well in the last couple years. But I still believe Jordan Binnington is the guy, and he's been handed the torch, and we'll see if he can elevate his play like he has on the biggest stages, Four Nations face-off and in the Stanley Cup Final.
Yeah, something to keep in mind. In the 2002 Olympics, the starting goaltender, Curtis Joseph, was not the guy that finished the tournament. It was Marty Brodeur. In 2010, Marty Brodeur, who had started the tournament, was not the goaltender who finished the tournament. It was Roberto Luongo. So Carey Price comes into the picture. We clearly knew that Carey Price was going to start and finish, and that's exactly what happened in 2014. I don't think it's so clear. I think there's one serious consideration here. Canada plays Czechia in their first game. Whoever starts that game better win that game. Because if they don't win that game, that means they're playing on a Tuesday in a qualifier to get to the quarterfinal on Wednesday, back-to-back games. So if that goaltender that starts against Czechia in game one doesn't win, there'll be a different goaltender in there. And that's a lot of pressure. So who does John Cooper and the coaching staff believe can do it? Not based on anything Jordan Binnington has done this season would give me any type of confidence that he can do it. But he might get the opportunity to show. If it's up to me, I'm starting Darcy Kemper. Won a world championship, won a Stanley Cup. He's got an evenness to his game. I don't want to be guessing. I'm starting Darcy Kemper, and I think Darcy Kemper can be the guy that can start it and finish it.
Yeah, I love what you said there about 0-2 in 2010, because I do think that history lesson's important here. It may not matter, who that first goalie we see is, because there could be a change once we get deeper into the tournament. But like you said, Craig, it's important you get off to the hot start immediately. You got to get winning right away. You got to get those vibes going. And for some reason, I keep leaning back towards Binnington. And some of this is a prediction based on John Cooper and what I think he would be thinking here. And obviously, Binnington isn't deserving of it based on his play. His play would say he's not deserving of even being on the team, but he's still here because I think Cooper, deep down, believes in him. They trust him. It might be an Achilles heel, but they really look at what happened at that Four Nations and think, that matters, we're going to apply it here. I would lean Binnington, but it's not the strongest lean I've ever had. All right, Craig, let's wrap this thing up with who we think is going to win it all. Who's going to come home with a gold medal? Craig, you start.
Yeah, it's hard to bet against Canada, but the USA, it feels, I know there's all this conversation about they haven't won on foreign ice during the Olympics or whatnot. It just feels like it's the USA's time. They didn't have Quinn Hughes last year at the Four Nations tournament. They have Quinn Hughes here. They got depth, but more than that, they have a belief. And I think that's a huge part of this. They're coming off the World Championship win, first time in almost 100 years. These players have all won. They've won at World Junior level. They've won at U20, U18. They've won. And they feel that it's their time. I think it is their time.
I'm terrified of the U.S., I'll be honest. But I still think Canada can get it done. There's always been a way, and I come back to number 97. This guy is going to be a man possessed, and we know what Nathan McKinnon can bring to the table. We talked about the depth of the forwards, and if there is a team that I believe can beat Canada, it's the U.S., but I still think that Canada finds a way to get it done. They are, determined. This is a once-in-a-lifetime chance for so many of these players. Let's not forget, Sidney Crosby, this could be his last Olympics. Who knows? The guy's a machine, and he continues to point per game or more than that throughout his whole career. But I think special players find a way to step up. And the Canadians are full of special players, and arguably the three best ones on the planet. Those guys will be difference makers. So I'm picking Canada ever so slightly over the U.S.
Yeah, I see it the same way, and I think the last point you made, Noodles, is what I've been trying to hammer home for years leading up to this, and I guess this is my last opportunity because we're going to get an answer in the next 2 weeks. But I'm going with Canada because of those top-end players, and it's always been what separated Canada from everyone else. You go all the way back to 72, through the 70s and 80s. You look at Gretzky and Lemieux. You obviously look at Lemieux in 02. You look at Sid in 2010 and 2014. You look at McDavid and McKinnon at the Four Nations, and they're still here. The best players in the world are Canadian, and I think that will be the separator. I think Cooper's going to put them in a good spot. I think McDavid will be great. McKinnon will be great. Makar will be great. The goaltending will be just good enough, and I'm going with Canada for gold. But nevertheless, it's going to be a great tournament, and this is it for predictions, boys. It's been a great run. It's time to drop the puck. Let's see what happens at the Olympics in 2026.